Hi everyone, thank you for being with me today. My name is Mary and I'm the Chief Impact Officer at Amira. If you've been joining us daily for these 10 days, or if you are watching now with your watch party, thank you for joining us. We are grateful that you have been with us for this journey through our work. It has been an adventure taking you behind the scenes so far. We've walked through what it looks like to be part of our resiliency groups and our outreach program. We've walked through our brand new community resource center that we launched in January. We've even looked at core aspects of our residential program. We've really zoomed in on different parts of our mission of providing refuge to those seeking to break free from exploitation and heal in community on their journey toward lasting hope. But now I'd like to take a moment to zoom out and look at the big picture. I'd like to show you this map. This map is a heat map from Polaris and the data from the National Human Trafficking Hotline. This shows you every reported case of human trafficking in the United States from recent years. As you can see, there are particular zones with higher reports than others, and where we are situated in New England, we are in a bright red area. A recent study published in 2020 shared that reports of human trafficking likely only reflect 10% of the reality of human trafficking in the country. So what you are seeing in that map only shows a fraction of the scope of the problem. At this point, you may be wondering, how does something this horrifying happen at such a mass scale in America? And it's a good question to ask. And that is what I want to talk to you about today. To understand human trafficking, let's go look at the federal definition. So sex trafficking is defined as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act, in which the commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age. I want to draw your attention to the three mechanisms the definition encapsulates: force, fraud, and coercion. We are going to find an answer to our question of how is the problem of human trafficking, or specifically sex trafficking, so widespread by looking at these three mechanisms. What is force, and what makes someone vulnerable to it? When we talk about force in relationship to trafficking, it's important to remember that this does not mean movement. Neither US law nor international law requires that a trafficker or a victim move across a border for a human trafficking offense to take place. Rather, trafficking is a crime of exploitation. The most common manifestation of force is to take all options except one off the table. Think about the people in our society who have no options. Perhaps they have a language barrier or have recently immigrated. Individuals living in extreme poverty who have no other option to access food or basic resources. Individuals suffering from addiction diseases that have altered their brain chemistry and it dictates their life. These individuals are most at risk of force. Traffickers target individuals that they know have no one else to turn to but them. And once they have engaged, they remove all other options available but to do what the trafficker wants them to do. Let's look at fraud. What makes someone vulnerable to fraud? Individuals that lack a safety net of some kind are at high risk of being exploited through fraud. Traffickers take important documents like identification cards and passports. They open debt in the name of the trafficked person, even forge documents that are incriminating. Many times traffickers already know the individuals that they traffic, and it begins with them getting leverage or using some piece of evidence or information as blackmail. That is what fraud looks like. But what does coercion look like? What makes someone vulnerable to coercion? Coercion is by far the most common mechanism used in human trafficking. In fact, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, which was the first law making human trafficking prosecutable in the United States, it was written to capture the criminal action of using coercion on another person in this way. Psychological coercion is the process of attempting to influence another person through the use of threats, punishment, force, direct pressure, or other negative forms of power. It's a system that uses psychological force in a coercive way to cause the learning and adoption of a new ideology or set of beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors. In 2007, a book was published called Pimpology. It was written by someone who has coerced and trafficked many women in the sex trade, and it was written as a manual for others looking to do the same. In the book, the author describes a specific aspect of coercion: self-esteem. He writes that the goal is to find whatever weakness a person has that induced low self-esteem and lean on that thing over and over and over again until their self-esteem is all but gone. If they don't have a weakness, make one. Studies have shown, and we have seen in our work, that this process leads to something called identity disturbance. There is a book used by mental health professionals called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the DSM-5. And it defines identity disturbance as a markedly and persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. So who is vulnerable to coercion? The answer to that question is anybody who doesn't know how to counter it. When we look at trafficking, we are usually looking at systems: poverty, systemic racism, addiction, the foster care system. All of these are systemic issues that make those individuals who face them far more at risk of being targeted. But even someone from a stable environment can be at risk of coercion if they don't know what they are looking for. And this is what we see in our work. This is why the scope of human trafficking is so wide in the United States. Nearly 90% of the women we have served did not know that they were trafficked at some point during their exploitation. This is the result of coercion. This is often the result of identity disturbance. This is the difference between someone understanding that they have been coerced and someone believing that this is who they are and this is what they chose. Usually one of the first parts of recovery for someone who has been through this is grieving that it happened. And that immediately leads them to ask two things. What do I do now? And what if I fall for it again? So much of the work of recovery is not just healing from the physical trauma or the emotional trauma. It's rebuilding identity. It's rediscovering who we are as individuals and separating who I am from who my trafficker made me to be. This is just one aspect of the complexities of human trafficking and what it takes to work with those who have lived it. We redesigned and launched our education program in 2019 to help our partners in this work understand the women we serve better and look at trafficking not just from an individualistic view, but a systemic view. It is from this systemic view that we work to create change for exploited individuals. Last year, our education program reached more than 17,000 people through awareness events and our advanced seminars, taking participants through the red flags of human trafficking, through trauma-informed care from a survivor's perspective, understanding helpful and harmful language, the history of inequality in prostitution, and understanding human trafficking as a public health crisis. This work has led to new partnerships forming programs opening, resources expanding, and more trafficked people being reached with the services they need. When we take the time to really understand the scope of the problem, we gather the pieces that we need to find the solution. If there's one thing that as an educator and a researcher, I want everyone to know about human trafficking, it is this. It doesn't have to be this way. We can do something about it. If enough people get involved, we can make a big change. It just takes every person doing their small part to create a big ripple effect. We're celebrating 10 years at Amira, but I am sure that this is only the beginning of our work. Thanks for being with us as we embark on the next stage, as we work to change things for the better for the women that we serve.